Hi guys, I will discuss accounts receivable management. For accounts receivable management, let us look on relaxing credit standards. What do we mean by relaxing credit standards? It means that firms will be more relaxed in extending credit to its customers. Most of the time, what are the common effects of relaxing credit standards? The first effect is it increases sales is because when you relax credit standards, more customers will be enticed to purchase your products or to avail your services, given that your credit standards are more relaxed. So that is the first effect, increase in sales. And next is it will increase the investment on accounts receivable. Why will it cause an increase in investment on accounts receivable? It is because if you relax credit standards, it means that customers will delay their payment most likely. So it's more likely that customers will be more lax in paying their obligations to the company. And because of that, the average accounts receivable of the company will be bigger or it will be larger. And if the average accounts receivable is larger, it also means that the opportunity cost is higher. Given that having accounts receivable in the balance sheet is an opportunity cost for the company. Given that it means that if the accounts receivable is high, it means that the company do not have the ability to collect cash as soon as possible. So there is an implication to that, which we will discuss later in the problem solving. And finally is, if we relax credit standards, there will also be an increase in bad debts. Given that if we relax credit standards, there is a possibility that there are customers who are not creditworthy who will not pay their obligations. So that's the harm or that is the disadvantage of relaxing credit standards because it increases bad debts. So with that, let us have a sample problem to further discuss what does it mean to relax credit standards. So the sample problem is, simple corporation has the following data. Annual sales of 10 million pesos, collection period of 90 days, contribution margin ratio of 20%, and opportunity cost of investing in accounts receivable, which is 10%. The corporation is considering a change in policy that will relax its credit standards with the following effects. The first effect is there will be increase in sales by 1,400,000 pesos. Secondly, under relaxing the credit standards, the collection period will be 120 days. And finally, bad debts will be 3% of sales. What is the question? The question here is, should simple corporation relax its credit standards? So the question is, what will be the basis on determining whether or not simple corporation will relax its credit standards? The answer is, we need to have a cost-benefit analysis. If the benefit is higher than the cost, then simple corporation must relax its credit standards. We will discuss what's likely to happen if simple corporation will relax its credit standards. So first is we have the increase in sales. Because of the relaxation of the credit policy, there will be an increase in sales worth 1,400,000 pesos. However, we need to recognize that if there will be an increase in sale, there will also be an increase in variable cost. That's why we will multiply this by the contribution margin. Kasi pag sinabi nating contribution margin, it is the variable cost is already deducted in computing for the contribution margin percentage. So that's why we will multiply 1,400,000 pesos times 20%. The increase in contribution margin is 280,000 pesos. So this is an advantage. Secondly, is we will have the bad debts. So in the new policy, or if we relax the credit policy, there will be a bad debt of 3%. Ang gagawin natin, yung 3%, imo-multiply natin siya sa 11,400,000 pesos. Kasi in the new policy, this will be the sales. Or this will be the sales in the new policy. So we will multiply 3% times 11,400,000. The answer is negative 342,000 pesos. So this is a disadvantage. Okay, the existence of bad debt is a disadvantage to the company. Number 3, we also have increase in accounts receivable investment, which is a disadvantage to the company. But before we proceed in solving this, or in analyzing 130,000 pesos, let us first discuss how do we compute for accounts receivable investment. Okay? The answer is we will be deriving the formula so that we can get the average accounts receivable. So that we can find the average accounts receivable. So first is, we can solve the accounts receivable turnover by dividing the number of days divided by the collection period. So we will assume that the number of days is 360 days. 360 days divided by 90 days. So the accounts receivable turnover in the old policy is 4. Meanwhile, in the new policy, the accounts receivable turnover is 360 days divided by 120 days. Therefore, the accounts receivable turnover in the new policy is 3. What we will find next is we will try to compute for average accounts receivable. So this is what we will do. Average accounts receivable can be computed by dividing the sales divided by accounts receivable turnover. So for the old policy, the sales is 10 million pesos divided by the accounts receivable turnover of 4. Therefore, the average accounts receivable in the old policy is 2,500,000 pesos. Meanwhile, on the new policy, the sales in the new policy is 11,400,000. We will divide it by the accounts receivable turnover in the new policy. So we will divide 11,400 or 11,400,000 divided by 3. So the average accounts receivable is 3,800,000 pesos. As you can observe, from the old policy to the new policy, the average accounts receivable increased from 2,500,000 to 3,800,000. So therefore, in the new policy, average accounts receivable increased by 1,300,000 pesos. So we will go back and we will analyze what is the implication of that? So what will be the implication? That's why if we will multiply 1,300,000 times 10% because the opportunity cost is 10%, so that will be a negative 130,000 pesos. Why is this an opportunity cost? Because if your accounts receivable is higher, it means that you have more difficulty in collecting cash. This 1,300,000 pesos is an opportunity cost given that you could have used this amount for investments if and only if you're able to collect cash as soon as possible. So this is an opportunity cost because it could have been converted or it could have been invested on short-term securities. So taking into account everything that happened in the problem, therefore, the net loss from relaxing the credit standard is negative 192,000 pesos. What does it conclude? It concludes that simple corporation must not relax its credit standards because if they do so or if they relax their credit standards, there will be a net loss or it will have a marginal cost of 192,000 pesos.